As we head into another politically charged year, the conversation surrounding misinformation online is growing. A recent survey by the Pew Research Center found a near even split when discussing the future and truth of our information environment. 51% of people say it will not improve, while 49% say it will improve by changes designed to reduce the spread of lies and misinformation. To talk more about this, we're joined now by CNET senior producer and CBSN tech contributor Dan Patterson. Hi, Dan.
Hey,
Great to have
Tanya.
you with us. So how has the issue of misinformation online evolved since the 2016 election, which is really about the time we all became aware of it?
Yeah, that's right. So propaganda and misinformation has been around for as long as humans have been around. But if you think back to the conditions of 2016, what we learned was that the Russian IRA and the GRU, those are the propaganda arms of the Russian government and military, we learned that they were propagating misinformation, what we called at the time fake news, on purpose. So they had entire offices dedicated to spreading lies and misinformation. This was kind of a revelation because we realized how coordinated that effort was and how much money they sank into it.
And the scale. I think people were blown away by the scale.
Scale is the right word, Tanya. And what we see now makes the scale of 2016 look teeny. So two things have happened. One is that the cost has been reduced dramatically. It's just easier to spread information now online than it was in 2016 because the mechanics of social media have improved. They're more efficient now than in 2016. There are more features. The other thing that we're seeing is that there are different players in the environment. So Russia didn't just propagate misinformation online. They also kind of built a playbook, and that playbook is being followed by domestic actors here in the United States. So not only is the cost down, but there are more players because that cost is down.
Well, then how much of a responsibility then do social media companies have to stamping this out, really?
Well, we look at what feeds these essentially algorithms, right? So everything you see on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram has been selected for you based on your engagement. So when you like, share, retweet, any type of engagement tells the algorithms you're into that type of content. And they're kind of built like an engine. So the more information they get, the more fuel they have, and the faster they can serve you more content tailored to your interests. So the responsibility they have is really to examine their own networks and to figure out how their networks have been exploited.
That is a tough job. Now, there are things that individuals can do, correct, to be a little bit more savvy and a little bit more aware that you're constantly being targeted by misinformation, right? And there are signs that something that you're looking at online is not quite what it appears to be, correct?
Yeah, right. And we don't want to cast any type of judgment on, look, we're all in filter bubbles, and we all kind of see the information that we've told the algorithms we want to see.
Right.
And all of us have our own biases. So we don't want to say one political side is better than the other, but there are things that you can do to identify bots and misinformation. One, look at the timestamps. If something is tweeting or posting rapidly, it could be an indication that there is inauthentic activity. We call it inauthentic because they're not always bots. They are often sock puppet accounts, meaning a fake account or a real account that somebody is not quite authentically, their identity isn't the real.
There's a real human behind it, just not the one that appears to be behind it.
That's right. And you can also look at the usernames. You can look, so if you see a lot of numbers and digits, that was easily created by an algorithm or by a computer program. But really, it's to do the thing that is counter to our human impulse, which is to be slow and cautious about content that you see and engage in. Often paid advertisements in social networks can be intentionally misleading.
And it's also, I think, important to be aware that sometimes stories that may start out with a germ of truth get blown way out of proportion or manipulated in a way that may not always even have been malicious. It may have just been a giant game of telephone where information gets changed each time it's shared.
Yeah.
So we have to always be conscious of that. I think as journalists, we always go back to the source, but it seems like the world needs to be journalists now and always go back to the source whenever possible.
Right. So that is this really nuanced but incredibly important distinction, Tanya, and that is the difference between misinformation and disinformation. Often real news stories, like you said, can be twisted or seeded with information that is not quite accurate, but it kind of lends credibility to a larger untruth. That's where we see misinformation. Disinformation is where we have what we call threat actors. Those are hostile or adversarial nations or criminal organizations or hackers trying to exploit the mechanics of the social web to intentionally spread a propaganda-type message.
And it seems almost it would be easier to debunk that sort of outright lie. But that misinformation might be harder to debunk because when you get to it, there could be a germ of actual truth, which therefore then makes the entire thing look more plausible.
That's the key challenge social media companies are facing right now. In fact, when I talk to sources, they say it's easy for social media companies to say, well, this is misleading. It comes from Iran. It is tied to a larger misleading campaign that we see. Okay, that's easy for us to tamp down. The hard ones, my sources, almost everybody in the InfoSec and cyber world tell me, is what's the difference between advertising that is misleading and actual disinformation? Those lines are becoming more and more gray.
Every individual has to be really savvy now about what they are consuming online. All right, Dan Patterson, thank you so much.
Good to see you.